Valorant's newest duelist is almost here, and he brings something to the game that we've never seen before. But is that actually a good thing? ISO's kit is pretty crazy, but we know how this goes. Either his abilities are so strong that he breaks the game, or he doesn't make enough of an impact to matter. So is ISO good, or is he another shitty agent like Deadlock? Alright, so before I get into all things ISO, I just want to remind you to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. It really helps us out and also prevents you from missing the next episode of Cracked. Last week, Riot gave us our first look at ISO, a new duelist coming to Valorant with the start of episode 7, Act 3. And his kit is very interesting. ISO's C ability is an indestructible wall that blocks bullets. It travels similarly to a harbor cascade, but you can't stop it. His Q sends out a projectile that applies a debuff on hit that doubles damage from all sources. It can also pass through walls like an Omen Paranoia. ISO's signature ability is double tap. Press it once to start a focus timer. Once that timer is complete, any enemies you damage or kill will have this orb pop up over their head. Shooting that orb gives you a shield that absorbs 1 instance of damage from any source. That could be a Raze ult or a single shot from a classic, just any piece of damage. Despite the fact that double tap looks like a mini aim labs routine, the most unique part of his kit is actually his ult. This thing looks crazy. It pulls you and the first enemy it hits into an arena where you both fight to the death using only your guns. A lot of people are comparing his ult to the Gulag in Warzone, a Mordekaiser ult in League, or even Gojo's domain expansion, but I gotta be honest, it feels weird as hell for Valorant. Forcing a 1v1 duel isn't something we've seen from a Valorant ult before, and it doesn't seem like there's any sort of interaction that prevents it either. It just isolates you and your opponent, and the better aimer wins. And, as expected, everyone lost their shit when they saw it.
Oh, gone. Oh shit. Let's go!
Hello, guys. What the hell?
ISO certainly looks unique, but we said the same thing about Deadlock, and well, look at how she turned out. Sometimes Valorant's most creative agents just don't pan out at a competitive level. The best characters in the game tend to play it safe with kits built around utility, mobility, or map control. But luckily, I was invited to test out ISO ahead of his release along with some pros and other content creators. So at the start of most rounds, I popped double tap before taking an engagement, but often found myself forgetting to shoot the orb immediately after I got the kill. After a few rounds, I finally started to remember and began chaining kills together, and it was honestly really satisfying trying to isolate fights and re-peeking with the shield activated. The wall was good for taking space, but if you don't follow it closely and send it out on specific angles, then you'll die like this. Although I really should have pre-fired Ethos in that corner. I didn't find much value with his Q, but Mimi and I conditioned the opponents to stay away from B main for most of the defensive side by comboing it with a shock dart at the start of most rounds. Similar to a fade seize or other utility that applies vulnerability, you typically get the most value by comboing it with other damage dealing utility. As for ISO's ult, my plan was to use it any time that I knew my opponents were on an eco or half buy. There were a few times that I actually lost to an opponent with a weaker buy, and this felt as awful as you'd expect. But for the most part, it worked out, making the ult a really effective way to take an opponent out of a round where you already have an advantage. It's also cool that if you pop double tap before you use the ult and you win that 1v1, you can bring a shield back with you. And you can also bring the shield with you into the ult. That said, it's not an ult that will suddenly turn the tides in a round that you're losing or struggling in, which is tough given what some of ISO's competition in the duelist role can do. Overall, I had a lot of fun playing as ISO. He's a cool agent with a lot of clip potential thanks to his resets, and I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of him in matchmaking. He's kinda another selfish duelist like Reyna. On the other hand, the only thing that really bothered me when playing against ISO was getting used to the shield. There were a few times where I assumed I had done enough to kill the enemy, but lost the gunfight because I wasn't used to the extra time to kill. So far, we've just been talking about ranked, but will the pros actually use ISO? Well, we've already seen coaches like Anders and Kaplan debating his value, and many people just don't think he's good enough to replace the meta duelists in pro play. And FNS actually brought up an interesting point. After Chamber came in and basically ruined the game, it almost seems like Riot is intentionally releasing underpowered agents.
The last like 2 characters are underpowered as f***, but in matches, you're never going to see this character being played. And the way you have to look at it is, what does he do that others don't do, and what do others do that he doesn't have? And in comparison, he's way worse than most agents, especially in his class. He's basically worse than every other duelist.
And I have to agree with FNS here. ISO was a lot of fun to play, but he still feels like a crappier Reyna. And with no movement abilities, it's hard to imagine pro teams picking him over Jett or Raze. Now Riot has tried to justify that design decision.
We wanted to avoid certain things like mobility and things like that. Mostly because, yeah, we have characters that do that, and like, while those are very premium outputs for a duelist, I think I wanted to try to explore ways of like, how do we get you to take space or be confident in different ways, right? And so that's kind of where the shield was born. It's like, you know, if you can tank an op shot, I think that's a hell of a lot of confidence for a lot of people. And as it played out, that was true. He's not supposed to be like really fast and like breaking sites like that, but he's supposed to like power through and, you know, can tank in those ways if he's playing well.
The problem is that the best duelists in the game right now do hit hard and fast and win those first engagements before dipping out into safety. And ISO just doesn't fit within the current meta, which makes me and a lot of other people worry that he might just be kind of mid. ISO officially releases next week, and although the community might eventually find a place for him within the meta, right now he feels underwhelming. That being said, he is a lot of fun to play, and he's a hell of a lot better than Deadlock. That's not saying much, but trust me, it's something.
Thanks for watching. If you want more content like this, hit the sub button and ring the notification bell. For unique bite-sized videos you won't find anywhere else, hit us up on our Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.